Okay, great. Again, welcome everybody to the Plan Giving Boot Camp. This is the first Canadian version, and I really appreciate the couple of you guys who signed up for it. I've had a lot of interest from Canadian fundraisers the last couple of months, and it's a great way for me to get it moving, is get a couple of people to sort of help test it out. And I've had to obviously make a lot of adjustments to the content of the Plan Giving Boot Camp. A lot of my regular course does involve U.S. tax law and U.S. vehicles. But I think I actually have a feeling that this course may end up being better, more practical for you guys. I'm going to leave aside the vehicles and the tax issues. I'm going to give you some resources, point you in the right direction on that. And I'm going to focus more on the interpersonal issues, programmatic issues, and marketing issues. And I think you'll get a lot of really good stuff out of this. But, of course, I want you to give me feedback as we're going along, and that's one of the reasons why I'm going to leave the line open. Now, if you find that there's too much static or too much background noise, just speak up, and I'll put everybody on a mute, and then you can always send a little text in to send me a question. Okay. Anything else? Well, I sent out we gave you guys Canadian lines to call in, but I know one of you guys, it didn't work out. So you can always call in through your computer. I try to encourage people not to do that because it potentially causes more issues with the sound. But in any case, I know one person utilized it. And anyway, what I'd like to always do when we kick off these courses is to go quickly around and have each person introduce themselves, and then I'll do my own little introduction and go into the course. So Matt, why don't you start, and I'll call out the other people who've registered.
Sure. Good afternoon, folks. I'm happy to be participating. So Matt McBride, I'm the Director of Alumni Relations and Development at Bishop's University in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and I've been working here in the Advancement Office at Bishop's for nearly 15 years now, and my role here at the university has evolved, and we currently do not have a plan giving officer, and so having certainly being able to myself gain some insight here, I've taken a number of different courses, but to continue to grow my knowledge here is very, I'm very much looking forward to this course, so thanks, Jonathan, for putting this together.
Okay, great. Tara Bischoff, are you on the call? I don't know if we have Tara. Okay, how about Cindy?
Yes, Cindy Floyd, and I'm from the YMCA of Greater St. John in St. John, New Brunswick. And my role here is I am involved with fund development, obviously, and communication at our Y. And we're building a new facility, so just wrapping up a capital campaign, and going forward, we do have an endowment board at our Y.
Hello. I think we lost you. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
We lost you a little bit there. Are you the one? I think you're the one who called in through your computer.
No.
Oh, okay. We lost you. You can finish up. Sorry about that.
Okay. I don't know what you missed, but anyway, we do have an endowment board here, and one of my roles is going to be to work closely with that group. So obviously I need to learn more about plan giving, so I'm excited for this course.
Great. And Valerie Rodney, are you on the call?
Yes, I am. My name is Valerie Rodney, and I'm with Christian Children's Fund of Canada in Markham, Ontario. I am the Major and Plan Gifts Coordinator. And we do not have a plan gift officer, but we would certainly like to establish one here. So this is one of my reasons for taking this course.
Great. Well, I think that's it. Anybody else on the call that I missed? All right, fine. So anyway, it's always we always learn a lot to hear about different backgrounds. Obviously, this is a small group, so it's a lot easier. My typical Plan Giving Boot Camp, which is U.S. fundraisers, is usually 15 to 20 people, so usually is a much longer introduction period. I'll introduce myself. My name is Jonathan Gadima. I'm an attorney by training and did practice law for a couple of years in the 1990s, but I was always geared towards fundraising, and particularly plan giving. My law school summers were spent in doing fundraising for what's a local Jewish federation. And I was also interning with the endowments director. And since 1998, I've been full-time in plan giving with large organizations and doing more of the complex giving initially, and that's where my expertise originally started out as. But over the last 6-7 years, I was with a large fundraising consulting firm, which did a lot of capital campaigns. I focused on planned giving. But over this time period, I've been forced to focus a lot on the softer parts of planned giving. And ironically, this course is really going to focus on the softer things, meaning the marketing, the interpersonal skills, the programmatic issues. Because on planned giving in the United States, as we're going to get through, it's going to be important for you guys to hear about the sort of the history and how things have changed in planned giving. But initially, planned giving, when I got in the field in the 1990s, was very heavy on the technical, the tax incentivized giving, complex things, and that's where I got my initial expertise in. But over time, things have really evolved, and I think for the better. I think the field, the fundraisers have realized, and planned giving fundraisers have realized in America, that most of planned giving is going to be on the what's called just a simple bequest side. So for those who are just getting into the field, you can sort of breathe a sigh of relief that you don't need to become a real expert in tax law and estate planning. You do need to get some expertise in that, and I'll give you some direction in that regards. I'm not going to try to teach Canadian law. I'm not that experienced in it. But I will send you guys in the right direction, and you could always pick up that information from other places. But I think the main parts will be, I'll try to cover them for you. And again, this is really a crash course, so there's obviously no way we can cover everything. And we do keep the sessions to up to an hour, sometimes go a little longer, and depends on the questions. Anyway, let's start going through the presentation. And I really do offer you guys to speak up, since there's only 3 of you and myself, and I think the sound quality is pretty good. So please feel free to ask questions. What we're going to try to cover today, and this is really the introduction, and again, I really would love to hear your feedback as we go through this. We're going to talk about why planned giving is extremely important, obviously for Canadian nonprofits, but I'm including U.S. nonprofits because I've picked up a lot of data about the Canadian fundraising world, but I have a little more in the data on the U.S. fundraising market tells us a lot, and I think it'll be useful for you guys. So anything that I felt was useful to bring into the course, I left in the slide deck. But obviously we're focusing on Canadian nonprofits, but the reality is that we're going to find out is that Canada and the U.S. really are facing very similar demographic issues, and why planned giving is really important. In part 2, we're going to go back into this question of what is planned giving, because there's a lot of misnomers. The name of the field has changed multiple times, and it's a good way for you guys, just sort of introduction. And again, please feel free to ask questions. All right, so why planned giving will be extremely important to U.S. and Canadian nonprofits in the next decade. And believe it or not, from my own putting this presentation together, I think it's more immediate for Canadian charities, as we're going to see in a minute. In any case, planned giving this is the equation. Nonprofits want to build long-term viability. They want to put aside assets. We call them endowments, whatever you want to call it, money that's set aside so that your nonprofit can rest assured in the future they've got money to turn to, maybe annual income that'll be spun off an endowment. That's what long-term viability of a nonprofit is all about. Universities know this really well. Other nonprofits are trying to catch up with it. And the way you get there is generally through planned giving. Very rarely do you find any endowment that's been built by straight, immediate gifts. Usually, there are donors out there who would be interested in giving you a straight endowment gift, but generally the way it works is, people put your nonprofits in their estate plans, and those large gifts tend to make up most of the endowments that are out there, and that's really what we're looking for. And I have this quote here. You have the slide deck. The bottom line is that nonprofits have to get out of this keep the lights on strategy, that they're short-sighted strategy that they're typically in, and try to think a little longer term, because it does involve direct changing your resources, moving some resources towards planned giving. What I mean is that you have a fundraiser out there who's soliciting gifts, whether they're annual gifts, smaller level, medium, or board level gifts, and it's hard for let that fundraiser think about planned giving because it does take away from their focus. But the reality is you've got to come up with something because there's a lot of potential for every donor to do multiples of their lifetime giving. We'll get to that in any planned gift. So you're really leaving money on the table, and you're really short-sighted if you're not thinking about what the future will be and how do we establish, get the future going for our nonprofit. All right, so now I pulled out this organization. I found information called Imagine Canada. And this, again, I just copied and pasted this slide, so I'm not taking credit for it. And I don't even fully understand it, but the question is, are Canadians becoming more generous? And this shows there's been a significant increase in money coming to nonprofits, Canadian nonprofits. I believe it's already up to $10 billion. I don't quite understand exactly why they put part of this in inflation, but it looks like a really nice upswing since the mid-'80s. And this chart was only up to 2010, and I just saw it recently. I saw that they were up to about the $10 billion mark. So there's been a nice uptick in money coming to nonprofits through charitable contributions, which is great. And it does. But the question always is, are people more generous? And that's really a question I want to look at. Now, this was from the same source. What is driving Canadian philanthropy? Now, there's a lot of different approaches to try. How do we link up? What is the cause? What's moving people to give more money? This chart, this triple line chart, was comparing the charitable donations, which has actually bumped up. Just take a note. You can see my cursor moving. Around 1996 is around the time, 95, 96, we start seeing a nice increase based on the donation. And these are trend lines and indices of real change and donations claimed. And again, this is based on the tax authorities. And then they're looking at try to compare the gross domestic product, which is a indicator of the economic activity in the country. And then, but interestingly enough, the median income of tax filers was sort of flat, which is I found that kind of interesting. But I wanted to show you guys something. I superimposed another trend chart from the same time period, but from and I guess since you guys are all live on the phone, and you could have looked ahead, but any guesses? If you didn't look ahead, or what would you have thought this trend line might be? Which seems pretty close to the giving trend line. So it's okay. Nobody has to answer. That's fine. We'll get the answer. It's actually Canada's disposable personal income. I don't have an explanation for that. You guys would probably know better why. There's been such an increase in the disposable personal income of Canadians from 1985 until this goes through 2010. But that's a really important point. I'm going to show you because I have a little more detailed data on the U.S. giving market, which sort of confirms what I'm trying to say here. This chart is inflation-adjusted giving in the U.S. from 1972 all the way to 2013. They actually have 2013 in the year, even though the chart only says 12. I actually added this year recently, last week. So, anyways, there's been in the U.S. side been a huge increase. I mean, obviously the numbers are exponentially larger. We're talking already up to close to over $300 billion a year as what they count, something called Giving USA. They count this. So we see a really steep increase. Again, the same, I just pointed out earlier, the increase really kicks in around 1996. And we say, boom, wow, going up. Same thing, interesting that in Canada too, same thing, 1996, things start soaring. And the question I always want to ask people is what changed? Now, it's even a steeper incline in America with the giving. We saw a similar incline, but the U.S. one is incredible. Over this from 1996 through the early 2000s, we see just basically it's not a doubling, but it's a huge increase in charitable giving. And the question really is how charitable is America? Did they become very everybody just decide, okay, now we just got to give a lot of charity? And I switch to the next slide, and it takes us back to the same issue. Is if in this slide shows the if you look at individual giving in America as a percentage of the disposable personal income. So basically, what it tells us is year in, year out, Americans at least, and I wish I had this number for Canadians, but I assume it's probably very similar. They give about 2% of their disposable personal income, or let's say disposable personal wealth, and money that they have money coming in, they're willing to give away about 2% of it. So what it tells us here is people have not gotten more charitable; they just have more money that they feel free to give away because they have more disposable income or disposable wealth. And so I come back to this slide, where again this is the U.S. side of fundraising, inflation-adjusted giving from 1972, and I want to take a note. Around 1991 is when our baby boom, and we're going to talk about this. The Canadians you guys have your own baby boom, which is basically the same years. Our baby boomers are the oldest of them. Are hit age 45 in 1991. They're already close to 50 by 1996 when we start seeing this increase. And then we see already by 2011, they're already hitting this sort of early retirement years, the oldest boomers. So hold on one second. So I have another, I always did this. This is another trend line, which again, I always challenge people. You guys don't have to answer it, but I always challenge, okay, this trend line looks really similar. It starts the ups and downs. There really seems to be a correlation between these two. Of course, the question is, what is this trend line? And some people say, well, it's the stock market, which makes a lot of sense. Could be the stock market. Stock market going up, and particularly in the 1990s, that's disposable wealth. That's probably a good explanation for why there's a lot more giving in America. But of course, the answer is it's not the stock market. The answer is that it's the employment numbers in America, that the numbers of people in the workforce, and this came from U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. They have non-farm employment, and it's like, the number of people in the workforce going up and up and up, and coinciding with in America, and maybe this happened in Canada too, is that the large group of people in this boom generation, those born right after World War II, between 1946 and the early 1960s, that drives the economy. That drives a lot of things. Puts a lot more people to work. Puts a lot more people have a lot more disposable income. Maybe the stock market does a lot better because the economy is stronger. Put all these factors together, and you've got a nice increase in charitable giving. The problem is that generation is going to start retiring, and that's really where plain giving becomes a major issue for nonprofits. Now let's take a look at the Canadian baby boom. I did not make up this slide. I actually hate using these slides when I create slides, but I thought this still showed us something really well. This came from Statistics Canada. You could find this stuff. This was the 2011 census. And it starts showing us and the next slide I think is even more telling. It starts showing us the numbers per thousand of individuals in these different age ranges. And obviously what just stands out is obviously you have a nice boom, the numbers of people born in these years between 1946 and in 1965, 1966, huge jump, and then we start seeing drop-offs. Interesting, we didn't have this, the baby busters. We have a baby bust. Our baby bust in America was in the 1930s because I don't know what happened in Canada in the 1930s, but in the United States there was a depression and there was a lot less babies born. But in Canada there was actually a baby bust between 1966 and 1971. So you'll see that very interesting. And this was that looking at the same generations, again from Statistics Canada, and I just something that really jumps out at me, it's really extreme, is that look at this. We have different population segments, and obviously this one, the baby boomers, is a almost a 19-year period, but of people born during that time period. 28% of the Canadian population in that grouping. 28%, huge. It's a huge number. I was shocked to see that this group's only a 5-year period, but yet basically this 5-year period is still very small. Tiny group after that, and then there was a nice the children of the boomers, the sort of rebound. So Canadian philanthropy can hopefully bank on that. The rebound, the baby boom, the children of the boomers can hopefully start joining the donor ranks soon enough to sort of save your nonprofits, but hopefully you'll get your plain giving programs going too. and I guess and I'll finish up here in a minute with more data slides. Any questions or comments about this issue, the baby boom, and how it's impacting Canada?
No.
I mean, is this new to you guys, or is this like same old, or is this oh wow, we got a problem here?
Not new to me.
No.
Okay, so and before I go through these rest of the slides, the biggest issue is that people hitting retirement ages, they are not going to continue that in the workforce like they were beforehand, and their disposable income, their disposable wealth gets tighter and tighter. Nonprofits who've seen a nice increase in donations are going to start facing more challenging times. You can't always have increasing fundraising every year if your prime prospect base are people who are entering their retirement years. And that's really the challenge nonprofits have to go through, and that's really where planned giving comes in, because there's a lot of potential there, and we've got to find a way to maximize it. There's a lot of other things we can do. Now, looking at the Canadian population overall, this was from, based on Statistics Canada. What's really incredible to me is even though the Canadian baby boom started the same year, basically right after post-World War II, but the Canadian percentage of people at age 65 and above hitting is going to be getting up to that 18.5%. That's about 4 or 5 years ahead of America. So for whatever reasons, and I had no explanation for it, maybe just Canada just had less of a population going into the baby boom, but Canada is a couple years ahead of America in terms of its aging. And so it's a more of an immediate concern. This 18.5% number, I'm going to give you something that helps you understand it. Everybody, I know Canadians love Florida. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah, there's something about Canadians in Florida, because I go to Florida and there's a lot of Canadians down there. That's just a lot of people down there in general. So think about Florida. We're going to start taking a look at Florida. Oh, and this was just a chart. I found a nice chart here, which was showing some projections on the percentages. Again, this was by region. The different regions. All of them still the same issue. Obviously, there's I don't know what the abbreviations mean. NU, that one's a very young population there. I don't know what they mean, but in any case, this was a breakdown. But I want to get to the next slide. Okay, I've taken a look at America. I just said that by 2021, we're looking at Canadian 65-plus population hitting 18.5%. Now, 2010, I did these slides originally in 2010. U.S. population was about 13%, 65-plus, and Florida was the only state above 17%. Of course, Florida was old in 2010. It's obviously older today, and that number is going up. We'll see that in a second. And the rest of the United States, and I was going to try to do this with the Canadian provinces, but I just wasn't going to be able to get it done before today, so I left it off. But we see, there's a sort of a spread between, very few very young states. Alaska and Utah were like the youngest states, below 9%, and then there's most of the states were sort of falling in that middle ground, either 9 to 13% or 13 to 17%, 65 plus. Let's look at today. This is going to the current year. So we have the United States goes quite a bit, joins that not yet Florida range, but moving ahead, getting closer and closer. None of the states now are younger than 9%. Utah is still our youngest state. I mean, people, again, youngest in terms of the least number of people age 65 plus. And then we can look at Florida. Now, Florida today is about 19.5%. So Florida's pretty old. I mean, I like to bring in the Florida analogy because you guys have been down there and you guys see how old it is. It's just obvious it's an older state. But currently today, the aging population issue in America hasn't quite hit that hard the whole country. But in 5 years, we get a bunch of states joining today's Florida, and the U.S. population creeping up to 16.3% of 65 plus. Now, Canada, I said by 2021 was already 18.5. So Canada is, again, ahead of the United States in terms of aging. And this was the key one. In 10 years, though, we're going to have 18.2% of America will be 65 plus, and it's just it's a major issue for fundraisers, for fundraising for nonprofit organizations. Are you ready for this? Have you, if you've got your Plan Giving programs going, at least you've got potential endowment money, meaning money that can be put aside for a time period where fundraising may get flat or it may be going down. It depends on how well built up your system is, and if you're getting new donors into the system, great, but you still want to maximize your opportunities with Plan Giving donors. And again, I just 18.2% in 2025. I just threw in 2030 for, again, the United States and Canada both have the same problem, is that rapidly aging population, mainly because post-World War II was a huge baby boom, and then there was a drop-off. Okay, now in terms of revenue potential, in terms of, now the U.S., I didn't have this number for Canadians. I've looked for it, but nobody published it. But in the United States, U.S. charitable bequests represent 7.7% of all U.S. fundraising since 1971. So on the U.S. side, we have a clear track record, year in, year out. The percentage of fundraising dollars that are coming from bequests has been pretty stable. That is poised to go actually much higher, that percentage. And some organizations who, for whatever reason, naturally on their own are much older, have already seen, if they had Plan Giving programs in place, they're seeing easily 25-30% of their revenue coming from Plan Giving each year, which is a little dangerous because you can't quite control Plan Giving. When I say Plan Giving, I'm saying bequests, people passing away and leaving them bequests. But the U.S. average is 7.7%. I suspect it's not that far. On the whole, it's probably similar in Canada. The rates of people, including charities in their wills, is very similar to America, generally speaking. Meaning, I found 4, 5, 6% possibly of the people who pass away in Canada leave a charitable bequest, and that's very similar to the U.S. market. So it could be a very similar number for Canadians, but in any case, there's definitely already revenue potential that's been going on in America for a long time. And on an individual level, there's an interesting study done. Again, it's already old news, and it's U.S. obviously, doesn't apply so much to Canada. But the U.S. Internal Revenue Service took a look at 10 years of data. Now, 1987 to 1997, they looked at estate taxpayers who left charitable bequests. Now, in America, to be an estate taxpayer, even in those time periods when the estate tax limits were pretty low, but for the most part, you're talking about the top 1 to 2% wealthy people in America. So very few Americans ever pay estate tax on the federal level. It's only the tippy top wealthiest people who ever pay anything in estate tax. But they look at, if you were an estate taxpayer, again, you filed an estate tax return, and if you left a charitable bequest, on average they left 2.7. If you were one of those people, on average you left 2.7 times your lifetime charitable giving in your bequest. And these are people I would call major gift donor types. Again, the wealthier sector in America, the top 2%. Yet, if they leave a charitable bequest, they're giving multiples of their lifetime giving. And most Plan Giving people, myself being one and being in the field for so long, I can honestly tell you that most charitable bequests that come in, more often than not, they're from your typical donors, people giving easily $100, less than $100 a year, $50 a year donors, $25 a year donors, low-level donors who are committed to your nonprofit, and they leave you a bequest. Sometimes the bequests are $10,000, sometimes they're $50,000, sometimes they're $100,000, sometimes they're $500,000 or $1 million. So that 2.7 times the lifetime giving, that is not even that impressive, to tell you the truth, because a typical bequest that I've seen, they're multiples of a person's lifetime giving. In fact, quite often, I always find this very ironic because as a Plan Giving person, I'm usually trying to get Plan Giving on the table and being pushed away by the major gift side. I always think to myself, when I see a large request come in from a donor who was not on our radar, may have been just a direct mail donor, and yet I see that this donor left us, a sizable bequest, $500,000 to $1 million, and I always find it ironic when you have a board member who may be giving $10,000 to $25,000 a year, which is certainly significant. Yet this one donor who was off our radar, who did who got the message one way or another, their one bequest quite often exceeds the lifetime giving of a lot of your board members. And then, of course, did your board member put you guys in their estate plans? And quite often that's not the case, and that's really one of the challenges you guys need to think about is, how do we take the case for planned giving? And that's why I always kick off these courses with trying to hone in on what's the case for diverting some resources and some time towards planned giving. You really want to get those people on board, get their participation, because you have to. Those are people they're on your boards, they're your leadership. They should take the lead role in bequests. And quite often with planned giving, you won't always know how much people are giving because there's a certain privacy issue here, and not everybody's willing to tell you what they're planning to do. Quite often donors don't want to tell you because they don't even believe that they're not even sure the amount that they have in there will actually get to you, or they don't even know because they might leave you a percentage of their what's called residuary estate. But in any case, you really never know. But I would say that your leadership are usually people who are have more substantial financially speaking, and those are people who you definitely want to get on board. I mean, I'm doing right now I'm in the middle of a survey campaign where we surveyed a couple thousand people through email, and we're going to do a hard copy survey, and it's a soft survey asking some general information, asking for their opinion about a couple issues and our mission, different little things, and then we also ask them about their wills and their estates. And what's nice is that we have 11 new bequest commitments that came out of the email blasts, but 2 of them are board members who are multimillionaires. So for me, this is great because this client of mine. They have a very, very wealthy board, but nobody seems to want to ask them to do planned gifts because they actually give quite a bit. I mean, most of the board members, if they don't do it every year, every now and then they'll each, give $1 million gift, things like that. But the reality is that, how could you not ask them about planned giving? And so, there's a lot of potential there. Again, we want to maximize our efforts here, and particularly with our boards. And one of the sessions which we'll go through is building your legacy society. And the key way of building your legacy society is to get your leadership on board with their own legacy gifts. Anyway, okay. So not getting too far. We'll just get the last slide or two about some more demographic stuff, and then we'll get into the what is planned giving really about. Now this slide, this is U.S. numbers. I might eventually add this to my Canadian course if I can find the Canadian births. But I think Canada, would you guys agree that Canada has had significant immigration that's impacted the country quite a bit? I think that's a big difference between U.S. and Canada because U.S. immigration I don't think is anywhere near Canadian immigration. But anyway, this was U.S. births, and again, this is sort of another way to take a look at the baby boom. And again, there's probably a similarity to Canadian, but we in the United States, our bust years were the 1930s, early 30s to the late 30s. There's a lot less births in America. There was actually a drop off, quite a big drop off from the 1920s into the mid 30s. Then the 1946 hits, and boom, we have a huge number of people being born in this country. The reason I put this slide out here is that this I'm circling these ages. These are the ages in 2015 of these people born in these years. This where I'm circling. This is where the planned giving money has been coming in the last couple of years. Our current dollars, meaning this is the ages where people are starting to pass away, and we're getting these gifts. So basically, planned giving has been doing all right in America, at least, even though it's been really through these lull years. I mean, people are good. We really should have had like sort of a depression in the planned giving numbers, but planned giving has sort of held its own. But what it does tell us is, at least on our side, is that this. If I flick to the next slide, this is where our planned giving prospects are. This is the ages of our planned giving prospects. Meaning we need to be talking planned gifts to people, but the late 50s to the early 70s. That's where also there's a huge number of people. So I suspect that's just the case also with Canada too. That the numbers of people who are now entering these retirement years, particularly from your baby boom, it's got to be humongous, and it's definitely something you guys have to think about in terms of how do we position it, how do we market it, and hopefully I'll give you guys a lot of good ideas. Any comments, questions? Oh, wait, one last slide. So this slide, I put together this one. Again, this is U.S. fundraising. Sorry. I wish I had the stuff for Canadian numbers, but there's no Giving Canada. It'd be nice if somebody should create something that does do this. So Giving USA, they track all the giving in America, and they have it broken down in a couple categories, but I'm only looking at total giving and bequest giving. And I put the bequests at the top, tippy top of the charts. And again, this was inflation-adjusted numbers. And again, 1996. 1996 is when the oldest baby boomers reached age 50. And we saw in Canadian fundraising the same thing, all of a sudden a big steep incline in giving. And my theory is that the baby boomers, which is a huge population group, hit the peak of their careers. I mean, the oldest were age 50, but the ones trailing them in their 40s were peaking out career-wise, and the economy was sort of doing really well at that point. At least the stock market was doing really well. And all of a sudden we see increasing in giving. Now, this little top part, the bequest dollars, have kept up. Their percentages as the giving amounts have gone up. The bequests have done pretty well. So there's been a trend in increasing bequests also. It's been a slow trend, but still keeping up with regular giving. But what's going to happen is all of a sudden, 2011, boomers are starting to hit the retirement age. Oldest boomers are going to hit age 72 by 2018. And I basically said here, I said, listen, at least on the U.S. side, fundraising may just start getting flatter and flatter going forward because the baby boomers are not going to be giving more of their retirement money. They're going to probably be cutting back on their giving, and we don't have a huge, secondary baby boom coming behind them. The Canadian secondary boom may actually come quicker, and maybe that'll help continue the increasing in giving. But the reality is that if I took the two different trend lines, one trend is that fundraising is probably going to get flatter in America, and two, the bequest dollars are just going to start increasing. And this is conservative speaking, is that I'm guessing, it was 7 to 8% a year bequest dollars for the entire country. It's probably going to go up to 20%, even up to 30%. And it really could be much higher than this because the sheer numbers of individuals who are in the baby boom, they start passing away. At a certain point, there's going to be a huge uptick in bequest dollars. And all of a sudden, at a certain point, nonprofits will be like, wait a second, why haven't we been in this plan giving game? So nonprofits have about 10 years. I would say 5 to 10 years to really get their act and get themselves geared up and get that marketing going. We'll cover the issue of, marketing plan giving is challenging, and we're going to talk about that in a second because usually it's a one-time gift, and a one-time gift is usually dependent on you going to your attorney. So a lot of challenges here. How do we implement a plan giving program? All right, so we're doing good on time. I think 20 minutes is just enough to cover this question about what is plan giving. Okay. There's been many definitions or names of plan giving, the field of plan giving that it's gone through, at least in the U.S. side, and Canada sort of has followed us. It was originally called deferred giving. Department of Deferred Giving. I don't know how many places use it, but that was what it was referred to. Plan giving was the deferred giving. And it implies sort of a delayed receipt by the charity, some sort of interim benefit to the donor. This was really in the 1970s or earlier, maybe even early 80s. It was referred to as deferred giving, and it was focused pretty heavily on these sort of tax structures that we have in the United States. Again, we don't have the same things necessarily in Canada, but in any case, that was what it was referred to. But as things progressed, it became called plan giving. Now, I bit my business called plan giving advisors because I know the fundraisers know what plan giving means, and that was the name of the term for the field. But I have a little trouble with the term plan giving, gifts that are planned. I don't quite understand what it really means, to tell you the truth. It's in fact I always talk to my clients about making sure don't on your websites, on your promotional materials, I don't necessarily want to talk about plan giving. I don't think donors know what that means. So things moved along, and the field at a certain point in the 1990s, our departments are called Department of Endowments and Plan Giving, which is was pretty good. It implies sort of long-term stability of the institution. Again, so endowments and plan giving go hand in hand. They're not tied to each other. A donor can do a plan gift to nothing to do with an endowment. They could say, here's my planned gift. I want you to use it immediately when you get it, whatever that is, or vice versa, meaning endowment doesn't necessarily need to be funded with a planned gift. But they do go hand in hand because typically that's the way it works. Institutions usually take their planned giving money, whether it's restricted or not by the donor, and they usually put it in some sort of endowment. And if they choose to put it into an endowment, that's not a binding type of endowment. I mean, the institution can always dip into that money. I don't know. I haven't investigated this. I know in the United States, the donors can restrict a gift to be held in, quote, endowment, which means that the charity has limited right to invade the principal. I'm assuming that same concept applies to Canadian charities, too, that if a donor wants to see that happen, they can sort of limit your ability to dip into the principal. And but the good news is you live off the income, and that's really the idea of endowment. But anyway, this was the field of planned giving. It was endowments and planned giving. But it moved. There's a lot of change. So there was those in the field, and there was a lot. I see most jobs or most places they're talking about gift planning. That became sort of the in with the marketing companies. Let's call it the Department of Gift Planning now, because gift planning does imply a little bit better grammar-wise than planned giving. So if a donor sees the Department of Gift Planning, they sort of say, okay, that sounds like a group that helps plan gifts. Was a nice term. And finally, over the last 10 to 15 years, there's been this push in the field towards legacy giving, or Leave a Legacy. There's Leave a Legacy Canada. That's a program that I think started in the United States and got up to Canada also, about encouraging the whole idea of legacy giving. And I really like the term legacy giving probably best of all. It implies sort of your donor's ultimate gift, message to the loved ones and to the world. That's what we're going to get to is the heart of planned giving, because the donors are basically putting you guys in their estate plans. And the most simple, and most of the giving through planned gifts is going to be coming through simple bequests, adding you guys to their wills, and that's really a personal decision. You have to think about that. It's like, wow, this person's actually come to the conclusion that they might leave money to their kids or other relatives, and they're going to put us in there too. It's about, there's a deep thought process going on with individuals, as far as I can tell, and it's a well thought out decision, and they don't necessarily want to include you in the thought process, but obviously, one of our goals is to engage donors in these conversations and see if they'll express it with us. So anyway, I typically have one of my first assignments, which we'll skip it for this course, but one of my first assignments was, to tell me what you think the definition of planned giving, the best definition of planned giving is. And I came up with this a couple of years ago. I ran into something in Giving USA, the ones who do all that data on American giving. They had done some research, and they found this concept of an aligning of values to be preserved in the future was sort of an interesting way incentive for people to make a planned gift. And so that's what I came up with as the core reason for any planned gift. Mostly bequest-type giving in your wills is when the values of an institution align with a donor's own values, to the extent that it becomes the donor's belief that these values should be preserved for the future. Meaning, the donor is really there's something about your institution's mission that really resonates with this donor, and to the point where they want to see you guys around in the future and after they're gone. Because the bottom line is that it's not. We'll cover it in later sessions, but the people start doing their plans and they realize they're just not going to be here forever, and that's a tough thought for a lot of people. And it's hard for you to introduce that conversation, saying, "Hey, donor so-and-so, you're not going to be here forever. What's going to happen after you're gone?" That's not a great conversation starter. And we'll talk about how do we create these conversations so that you don't turn off your donors. But this is really what's happening here, is that they're realizing they're not here forever, and they're looking at institutions that they like. They may give to a lot of places, but only probably a handful of the more special places, special in their heart. We'll talk about what that really means. Are going to get that actual gift in the will, which can be quite big. And the actual gift structures, the options. And I'll try at some point. We'll swing back. I'm going to show you in a minute or two before we get off this call. I'll show you two of the resources I have for you guys. But these actual gift structures, the options, they may or may have some tax benefits or retirement benefits, but those are only like added incentives. Those are sort of sweeten the pot, and it's important for you to get to be more familiar with those options because they do come up, and those are things sometimes that just sort of move the donor to really do something. But the reality is, the real reason they're doing it is because they really want you guys to be here for the future, and that's sort of part of their own personal legacy. That's really where we want to get to. So, going back to what is Plain Giving again? It is part fundraising, meaning it's part of fundraising. You're not going to create a Plain Giving program, which is okay. Now we have our donors in one group, and now we have a Plain Giving program. And they're going to go out and find new donors, or new people going to give Plain gifts. That's not how it works. Plain Giving is an extension of your fundraising program. So it is part fundraising. Sometimes it's part financial and estate planning, which is, again, I won't cover that much of it in this course, but that's good for you guys to be more and more cognizant of these financial issues that your donors are going through. So it is important because those conversations may come up. But it's important to recognize that it's Plain Giving is something that the only people who do this are people who have philanthropic intent. Philanthropic intent, they want to do something good for you. As you get more into Plain Giving, you're going to find out, I can guarantee that you will, if you become the Plain Giving officer or you take on this charge or your department's doing this, you will start finding people who come to you with different ideas. And you really want to get a sense of that there's some philanthropic intent, because part of the negative of Plain Giving is that all the weird stuff that people want to try to do with you comes your way, and quite often people are not so philanthropic, and they're trying to get either some sort of income benefit to themselves, or they're trying to avoid some tax problem, and they're trying to, they're not really thinking about the negative thing that they could cause you guys by giving you certain types of assets. So you have to be on guard for that. Philanthropic intent is really important. And a true Plain gift is only done because somebody really cares about your institution, really wants you guys to be around in the future. Typically, we're talking about a person's final gift to an institution. Not necessarily. We've experienced in the United States, because we have a couple different types of vehicles. We have these vehicles that give people income for life. So somebody gives us $10,000, we'll give them 5% or 8% or whatever, depending on their age, income for life. And donors love these things. And they just do them year in, year out. But besides those unusual situations, we're talking a one-time final gift to an institution. That's really what we're talking about, primarily from wills and estates. That's good for you guys, because that really simplifies things. You don't need to become an expert in tax and estate planning. Secondarily, though, and important though, are these tax-motivated giving. They may be testamentary in nature. Your organization may not actually receive may not have access to the funds until the donor passes away. But that is part of Plain Giving. And here it's important to think about how Plain Giving is different. Different from particularly other fundraising, because it is part of fundraising, but the messaging is going to be different. Number one, the marketing time frame. It is a different marketing time frame. As we said, this is a one-time gift. Usually requires someone to go to their lawyers. Now, I found something really neat that I'm going to share with you guys, is that in America, it's a big no-no. And I'm a lawyer. I hate lawyers. I like myself, but I just hate I hate actually being a lawyer. But in America, you have donors, and you say, hey guys, why don't you all put us in your wills? But we have to tell the donors to go to their own attorneys. And it's a real big hassle. It's a big problem. It's obviously the best thing for an individual to get their own independent legal advice when doing these things, and particularly if it's done right, it has to make sure it's done right. But what I actually found, and I'll share with you guys during the week, there in Canada is not as strict. So meaning there's an online company, which I forgot the name of it. Individuals can do their wills a lot easier in Canada for some reason. I guess the way common law developed, is not as big an issue. So there's definitely a little more opportunity to guide individuals. Say, hey guys, check out this website. It's a do-it-yourself, will option, which seems to make sense. Me as an American attorney, I just can't push people to I can't send donors to those types of sites. I just know how these things work, and I just know that the chances of the will being valid are not great if an individual does it themselves, even if they use one of these online programs or there's different ways to do it. But in any case, this marketing time frame is a big issue because you got to get someone to go to their attorney. You know, they're not going to tell you when they're going to their attorney, so you really got to market it in a sort of soft, general way for over many years. And that's part of the issue is how much money you're going to put into your marketing, your broad marketing. You got to do it because you don't know which donor is going to come through with the bequest. And I see that it's really no rhyme or reason. Even though if you ask me what's the best plan giving prospect, and we'll talk about that in other sessions, you know, I'll tell you, okay, you know, long-term givers, people have been with you for 15 years or more. But I'm doing this survey campaign right now, surveying. You know, we sent out 3,000 emails, and I'm looking at the results of people who said they're interested or they're actually doing a bequest, and I'm shocked to find that there are one-time donors. You know, small, short time, or very, you know, someone gave to us 1 or 2 times. I said, yeah, they're doing a bequest for us. So it's hard to know where the bequest will come from. So plan giving is very different than regular fundraising in terms of the marketing time frame. You've got to market it. You've got to get that messaging out, but you never know when it's going to really impact somebody. Again, back to the same question. It's a once-in-a-lifetime gift that goes hand in hand. So, you know, you either got it right and the donor sees that message or has the idea, and maybe they got it from you, maybe they got it from somebody else, and they do the gift for you, or not, and you miss out. And the message is different than your typical mission-related message. You know, if you're, let's say, the YMCA, and you're going to do programs, you know, special programs today, that's great, but that's not your message about for bequest donors, for legacy donors. Your message for legacy donors is, you know, we've been here for 100 years. We've served you guys. You know, how about let us be here for another 100 years? You know, and create your own personal legacy with us. We'll talk about that in a second. You know, it's a slightly different message, and again, we'll talk more about how to frame the message. That'll be next week, I think, or 2 weeks. I think in 2 weeks we'll talk more about that. And of course, yeah, that's the point. Is again focusing on sustaining the future. I said yours and ours. I mean yours meaning you, the donors, and ours meaning us, the nonprofit. Okay, and this is sort of summing. This is our last slide, and we're going to get back to this stuff in the next sessions. Of course, you know, legacy thinking. That's really where we hit the ultimate success in terms of connecting with our donors, getting that right message out to people. Once the donor starts thinking in this direction about their legacy, what kind of message they want to leave to the world, to their family, that's when your organization is really in good shape. And if you're dealing with interpersonal connection with donors, if you're a major gift donor, a fundraiser, talking face-to-face with donors, and you get your donors start talking about what kind of history they have with your institution, what kind of legacy they want to leave with you guys. That's when you're getting your planned gifts. You know, what kind of legacy do you want to leave with our institution, or how do you hope to be remembered by loved ones and others? Really, you have to come up with your own questions to try to draw this out. Obviously, in fundraising, any type of situation like a fundraising situation, you want your donors to start telling you. You don't want to be the one talking the whole time. You want them to be telling you what they're thinking, but you want to be able to guide that conversation. How do you want to impact the world or a community or the community with your legacy gift, or what benefits did you receive that you'd like others to also benefit from? Obviously, universities have a lot of advantages in planned giving. You know, they've been around a long time. The donors think back to their great experiences they may have had at that university. They have a lot of gratitude to what they were able to get out of their education, and they want to share with others. So that's a great, and usually endowment scholarship funds. I assume you have scholarship funds in Canada. Scholarship funds are like a great way. Hey, I can fund a scholarship fund while I'm alive, of course, or after my passing. Let others to get the same benefits I got. It's a nice match. And that's really where planned gifts happen. Now, I have here, you guys have the PowerPoint, I hope. If not, just send me an email. There was interesting brain research done. I decided just, instead of going through the research, not my research, the professor who did the research, his name is Professor Russell James. If you go on to this thing and you click through this, you will get to see you will see, I think that was our last slide. Yeah, I'm going to click and see what happens. You click that link. Oh, it's not going to, let's see, you're going to, let's forget about that. But anyway, you click that link, it'll take you to a YouTube presentation about It's really interesting stuff. You'll learn a lot of good stuff that beyond the level of this course. Give yourself an hour if you want to listen to the whole thing. Very, very interesting. So I do recommend that. That doesn't cost you anything. It's free. So I want to show you guys one quick thing here before we sign off. So I believe we shared it. I have a folder. Well, I can't show it to you on this computer right now, but we have a library of documents. Some of the documents are not applicable to you guys because they're just basically on U.S. vehicles, but you can take a look at our Plan Giving, our library of documents. I put in there a folder for the Canadian Boot Camp, which that folder will have, and you'll always get a link to this. The links will always be live. You'll be able to go to that folder and take a look at the recordings of these sessions, of the PowerPoints, plus some extra stuff. For example, now there is the Canadian Gift Plan. I spelled that wrong anyway. Take a look at this. Let's take a look at this. Now, I used to work with Jewish federations. Jewish federations, even in America, probably Canada too, have just been a little ahead of the game in terms of plan giving. They're very, they had their own demographic issues to contend with, which are, much greater problems down the pike than others, and these problems happened to them 20 years ago. So the Jewish community, Jewish federations in America, very, really innovators in plan giving, and Canadian federations which are connected to them got out and did their own stuff. So I actually worked with this guy, Robert Kleinman. He's a really nice guy. He wrote a whole book, and it's online for free, but I copied it, and you guys can just download it. He wrote he calls it JCF, that's obviously Jewish Community Foundation, Canadian Gift Planning book, because he was involved with all these plan giving officers in America, and we had all of our own books and all of our own stuff, and he wanted to create his own, because, it's not fair to them. So, but it's this really great stuff here. Obviously he has some stuff about, gift planning to Canada, Jewish gift planning. Okay, fine. You can skip that. It doesn't apply to you guys. But, percentage, limitations, excess contributions, bequests, life insurance. It's really an amazing document. So I really recommend just printing the whole thing out. How long is it? It's not too long. But they put a lot of time and effort into this, and they give it out for free. And he did it in 1998, but they do update this. So my suggestion is, look through it, get a lot out of it. Obviously, you may want to, it says here, this information was updated as of May 1st, 2010. I don't know if anything's happened since then. I'll just flip through real quick, and I have another thing to show you guys, some mission type stuff here. But here's we get by this page, we're getting into actual technical things here, the Income Act Canada, things like that. Again, I don't want to try to teach this stuff because it's it's not right for me to try to get into an area which I'm totally not experienced in. So you have number one resource that you guys have your access to. So again, you could have gotten it for free without me. Hold on. And the other resource is another free one, Canadian Donors Guide, which I found was really interesting, and this is really new, 2014-2015. Again, you guys can download this from my website if you don't want to find it yourself online. Hold on one second. I just want to scroll a little bit through it. Even in French. Yeah, part English, part French. That's great for you guys. There's obviously some advertisements in here. There's a lot of places advertise, a lot of places push, but you just get through all the advertisements and stuff. You get some really good content here. And there's a lot of good articles. And again, stuff that I don't want to even get into because it's beyond my expertise, but charity diligence checklist for charitable bequests. That's really interesting. Summary of tax considerations. I probably will read most of this stuff during the course, and if I have more comments for you guys, I will give it to you. But these are articles written by people who really know their stuff, and insurance, types of gifts by will, cultural property, different stuff. So there's really, a lot of reading for you guys. Let's see how far it goes, how many pages. There's a bunch of different articles. So anyway, I really recommend this, to print this out and to look through it and to read as much as you can of it, because it's really good stuff. Now it's thick, it's dense. It's probably not an easy read, but you could probably read each article. New Testamentary Charitable Giving Regime. I don't know what this stuff even is talking about. I probably will spend some time reading it next week or two. Anyway, so we hit 101 time-wise. Any questions or comments before we end the session?
This is Matt. No, none for me. Thanks. I think this was a good start. Certainly interesting to see some of the baby boomer numbers. I think those are really very true, and we can all, it gives us a lot of thought there for sure. So, anyway, thank you very much. I look forward to the next session.
Great. So anyway, guys, everybody look for emails. If anything is weird, you don't see any emails from us, my assistant Amy or myself, and you're wondering, hey, wait, how do I get onto the course? It's again 6 weeks in a row. This is the first week, so we have 5 more weeks. Basically 1 hour, same time next Wednesday. So 6 Wednesdays in a row. The link will always be the same. So if you find any of the emails with the link to the join.me site, you'll get in there, and the phone numbers stay the same. And if the numbers are not a local number for you, and you can dial through your computer, it's fine. Just again keep Luckily this time I think one of you did dial through the computer, but there was no issues with the sound. Anything else? Any other questions? Next week, I believe I can't remember. I think next week I talk more about an overview of the marketing. I just have to think about it. You'll get an email in a day or two with the next topic. Okay, great. So if anybody has any offline questions for me, always email me. It's the best way to reach me. And great. I really appreciate you guys participating in this because there was a bunch of people interested in this, and I'm glad to start a small group. But if we get good feedback, we'll keep doing this course, and hopefully it'll be beneficial to a lot of places. Anyway, with that, I think I'm going to sign off. Any last comments?
No, thank you very much.
No, none from me. Thank you.
Great, everybody. All right, so we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye-bye.
Okay.